You notice it in the smallest moments. When the door closes behind you, when your phone finally stops buzzing, when there's no one watching your face to see if you're reacting correctly. Your shoulders drop without you telling them to. Your breathing slows. Your thoughts stop performing. It's not that you were overwhelmed in a dramatic way. No panic, no meltdown. Just a quiet sense that something in you has finally been allowed to stand down. When you're alone, you don't have to adjust your tone. You don't have to read between lines. You don't have to keep a part of yourself slightly alert, slightly edited. You think more clearly. You feel more real. Like your internal volume has been set back to its natural level. And maybe that's the part that confuses you. Because if being alone feels this calm, this steady, this safe, then why does the world keep treating solitude like something that needs to be fixed? From the outside, your preference for being alone is easy to misread. People assume it means you're shy, or withdrawn, or quietly struggling with something you won't admit. They see the absence of noise and imagine the absence of connection. They see fewer words and assume fewer feelings. So they worry, or push, or gently suggest that maybe you should get out more, as if calm were a symptom and not a state. But what they're reacting to isn't what's actually happening inside you, because your solitude isn't empty, it's regulated. When you step away from people, you're not stepping away from life. You're stepping away from the constant, subtle work of attunement, tracking moods, reading expressions, sensing shifts in energy, adjusting yourself accordingly. None of that is dramatic. It's just constant. And for someone like you, that constant awareness doesn't shut off automatically. So when you're around others, even people you like, a part of your system stays slightly engaged, listening, monitoring, calibrating. Not out of fear, out of sensitivity. Solitude, then, isn't avoidance, it's relief. It's the moment when your inner world no longer has to synchronize with anything external, when your thoughts can move at their own pace, when your emotions don't need to be translated into expressions someone else can understand. Society often labels this as being too comfortable alone, as if comfort were suspicious, as if peace needed an audience to be legitimate. But what if your calm in solitude isn't a sign of disconnection at all? What if it's a sign that your system knows exactly where it feels most balanced? To understand why solitude feels so regulating for you, it helps to look at how your nervous system actually works. Not in a technical way, in a human one. Your brain is constantly scanning for information. Tone changes, facial expressions, pauses, expectations. Most people do this automatically, without it costing them much energy. But for you, that scanning runs a little deeper. Your system doesn't just notice what's being said, it notices what's underneath it. What someone means, what they might need, what mood they're in before they even realize it themselves. That kind of awareness isn't anxiety, it's attunement. The problem is, attunement requires resources. Think of your brain like a control room. When you're around others, there are more screens lit up, more signals coming in. Nothing dangerous, nothing wrong, just more. So your system stays lightly activated. Not tense, just engaged. When you're alone, many of those screens go dark. Your brain doesn't have to interpret social cues. It doesn't have to decide how to respond. It doesn't have to keep part of you externally oriented. And because there's no immediate demand, your nervous system downshifts. Heart rate slows, muscles soften, thoughts become less fragmented. This is why you often feel clearer when you're alone. Not because you're escaping people, but because your system finally gets to operate in low power mode. There's also something else happening. When you're alone, there's no need for self-monitoring. You don't have to wonder how you're coming across. You don't have to adjust your expressions to be readable. You don't have to translate your inner experience into something socially legible. Your inner world can just exist. For someone wired like you, that absence of performance isn't indulgent. It's stabilizing. Your nervous system isn't seeking isolation. It's seeking coherence. Solitude provides a space where your internal signals don't have to compete with external ones, where your brain doesn't have to prioritize anyone else's emotional frequency over its own. That's why the calm you feel alone isn't numbness, it's alignment. But there's a quieter question beneath all of this, and it's one worth approaching carefully. Here's where the explanation needs to slow down, because not every preference is just a preference. Sometimes the same behavior can come from two very different places, and the difference matters. So the question isn't whether solitude calms you. That part is real. The question is why it calms you. For some people, being alone feels good because it's where they think best, where their inner world has room to stretch, where their energy naturally settles. For others, solitude feels good because it's the only place their system doesn't feel watched. And those two experiences can look identical from the outside. If you grew up needing to be emotionally aware early, if you learned to read rooms before you learned to relax in them, your nervous system may have adapted by staying subtly alert around people. Not because people were unsafe in a dramatic way, but because being attuned kept things smoother, quieter, more manageable. Over time, that alertness can start to feel like your baseline. So when you're alone and it finally turns off, the relief can feel profound. This doesn't mean your love of solitude is a problem, and it doesn't mean it needs to be fixed. It just means it's worth noticing the difference between choosing quiet and needing quiet to feel okay. There's no accusation in that distinction, only information. Because if solitude is where you regulate, then understanding why matters more than changing how. Awareness doesn't take anything away from you. It gives you more choice. And that's the part people often miss. If solitude is where your system settles, that doesn't make you fragile. And it doesn't make you disconnected. It means your inner world is sensitive to input. And sensitive systems need the right conditions to function well. There is nothing wrong with the fact that you think more clearly when you're alone, that your emotions feel more organized, that your body softens when no one is asking anything of you. Those are not signs of avoidance. They're signs of self-regulation. At the same time, you don't need to turn solitude into an identity you must protect at all costs. Calm isn't something you lose the moment someone else enters the room. It's something your system learned to access in a very specific environment. And now that you understand that, you get to carry that awareness with you. Not to force yourself to be more social, not to justify staying alone, just to recognize that the peace you feel in solitude comes from coherence, not withdrawal. From your nervous system finally being able to listen to itself without competing signals. That's not something to defend or explain away. It's something to respect. And when you stop seeing your calm as something that needs justification, it becomes easier to trust it, whether you're alone or not. If this felt like it put words to something you've always sensed but never quite named, you're not alone in that experience. There's more clarity where this came from, whenever you're ready to explore it.